For 11 years, I built the foundation of trust that kept billion-dollar clients loyal to my company. I was the bridge between promises and delivery, the one voice they believed when uncertainty crept in. Then the VP decided experience was expendable. He replaced me without warning, handed my life's work to someone who thought charisma could substitute for credibility, and expected me to fade quietly into irrelevance. What he never bothered to learn was that every contract, every renewal clause, every authorization checkpoint ran through a single registered name. Mine. And when he severed my access without completing the legal transfer, he didn't just lose an employee. He lost the only person who could keep those accounts alive. This is what happened when a company confused the messenger with the message, and discovered too late that trust doesn't transfer with a PowerPoint slide. Welcome to Revenge with Precious, where we share real stories of betrayal, resilience, and the courage to stand up for yourself. These are tales of people who refused to stay silent, who drew boundaries when love turned toxic, and who chose their peace over family obligation. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, these stories are for you. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change how you see your own life. Please, watch till the end. Let's get started. The projector hummed in the conference room like a dental drill, and I watched my name disappear from the screen. 11 years of client relationships, condensed into a single bullet point under operational restructuring. The VP stood at the front, his smile stretched tight across his face, the kind of expression you see on people who've rehearsed compassion in a mirror. He gestured toward the young man sitting 2 seats down from me, someone I'd trained 6 months ago on how to format quarterly reports. Starting today, the VP announced, Jonah will be leading our major client portfolio. We're moving toward a more dynamic engagement model. The room erupted in polite applause. I didn't move. My hands stayed folded on the table, my breathing steady, my face neutral. I'd known this was coming. Not the specifics, not the timing, but I'd felt the shift. The whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. The sudden interest in my processes. The questions about which systems I used, which contacts I maintained, which authorizations required my signature. I'd documented everything. Every clause. Every handshake email. Every piece of leverage they didn't know I possessed. So when the VP turned to me, expecting shock or protest, I simply said, I checked something this morning. His smile faltered. Just for a second. My name is June. Not the kind of name that demands attention, which suited me perfectly throughout my career. I was Senior Account Relationship Manager at Bridgeport Financial Solutions, a mid-tier firm that punched above its weight because of the clients we retained. Not the clients we acquired flashily, but the ones we kept quietly, year after year, through market crashes and leadership changes and industry disruptions. I was the reason they stayed. Not because I was brilliant with numbers or charismatic in boardrooms. I stayed because I answered emails at midnight when a client panicked about a regulatory change. I remembered the names of their children. I reviewed every contract addendum personally, catching errors that could have cost them millions. I built trust the old-fashioned way, one promise kept at a time. The VP never understood that. He saw my spreadsheets and thought they were bureaucracy. He saw my late-night calls and thought they were inefficiency. To him, client relationships were data points on a dashboard, green lights that stayed green through corporate magic. He genuinely believed that if you put a confident face on a Zoom call and used the right buzzwords, loyalty would follow. I knew better. I knew that the moment you broke trust, no amount of charm could rebuild it.
The warning signs started 3 months earlier. The VP gathered the team for what he called a strategy alignment session, which was corporate code for I'm about to change everything you do. He stood in front of a slide titled Modernizing Client Engagement and talked about agility, streamlined processes, and bringing in fresh perspectives. Every third sentence contained the phrase, new energy. I sat in the back row, watching colleagues nod enthusiastically, watching them believe that change for the sake of change was progress. One of the junior associates raised her hand. Does this mean we'll be restructuring account ownership? The VP's smile widened. We're evaluating how to best distribute responsibilities to maximize impact. Translation: yes, and some of you won't be managing anything soon. I didn't ask questions. I took notes. Careful, detailed notes about what wasn't being said. After the meeting, I returned to my desk and pulled up every client contract I managed. 17 accounts. Total annual value, $1.4 billion. I opened each contract and navigated to the authorization clauses, the sections most people skip because they're dense legal language about signature authority and transfer protocols. Then I printed them. All of them. I labeled the folder Compliance Review and locked it in my desk drawer. The email arrived at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when my phone buzzed. The subject line read, Organizational Transition, Action Required. I opened it with the kind of dread you feel when you know bad news is coming, but you're still hoping you're wrong. Dear June, as part of our ongoing optimization efforts, your current account assignments will be reassigned under the new strategic client engagement structure. Effective immediately, your role will transition to Senior Advisory Consultant, providing operational support across teams. Please coordinate with HR to finalize the transition by end of week. Thank you for your continued dedication. I read it 3 times. No phone call. No meeting. No acknowledgement of 11 years. Just a midnight email with corporate jargon and a 5-day countdown. I sat up in bed and opened my laptop. I logged into the contract management system and navigated to the authorization dashboard. Every account still listed me as the primary relationship officer. Every renewal notification still routed to my email. Every quarterly approval still required my digital signature. I took screenshots of everything. Then I drafted an email to myself with the subject line Documentation Complete, and attached every screenshot, every contract clause, every authorization record. I scheduled it to send in 72 hours. Then I went back to sleep. The next morning, my phone rang before I reached my desk. The name on the screen made me pause. Desmond Shaw, CFO of Halstead Industries, my oldest and largest client. We'd worked together for 9 years. June, his voice was careful, measured. I received an email this morning about a transition. New account manager. I sat down slowly. That's correct. The company is restructuring client engagement. Without discussing it with us first? There was an edge to his voice now, the kind that appears when someone feels blindsided. That's not how this relationship works, June. We stayed with Bridgeport because of you. Not the brand. You. I chose my words carefully. I understand, Desmond. I'm still here for now, and I'll make sure your renewal process stays secure. Your renewal process, June. Not theirs. Yours. The distinction hung in the air between us. I'll call you back, he said. The line went dead. I stared at my phone. That was the moment I knew the VP had miscalculated. He thought clients stayed because of competitive rates and service agreements. He didn't understand that in high-stakes finance, clients stay because they trust a person, not a company. And that trust doesn't transfer automatically when you reassign a portfolio. I found them in the break room later that morning. 3 junior associates clustered around the coffee machine, voices low but not low enough. Finally, one of them said, stirring sugar into her cup. The VP wants people who deliver results, not people who spend all day double-checking emails. Another one laughed. Seriously. How many times can you review the same contract? Old guard mentality, the third one added. They can't adapt. I walked past them without stopping, my face calm, expression unreadable. They didn't see me. Or maybe they did and didn't care. I poured my coffee slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch. Finally, one of them noticed me and coughed, awkwardly changing the subject. I smiled. Not a warm smile. The kind you give when you know something they don't, when you've already calculated 3 moves ahead while they're still celebrating the opening gambit. My inner monologue was quieter, colder. They think double-checking is weakness. They'll learn it's insurance. I carried my coffee back to my desk and opened my contract folder again. Not to review the clauses. I'd memorized those years ago. I opened it to remind myself why precision mattered, why every comma and contingency existed. These weren't bureaucratic hoops. They were safeguards. And the VP had just jumped through them blindfolded. The HR meeting happened Thursday afternoon. Catherine from Human Resources sat across from me with a folder and an apologetic expression. She was good at her job, which meant she knew how to deliver bad news with a sympathetic tone. "June, we want to position you for continued success," she began, "which was code for your being demoted, and we need you to accept it gracefully." "So no direct client access?" I asked. She hesitated. "Not immediately. The new structure requires us to centralize client touchpoints through the strategic engagement team." "And my current authorizations?" "Those will be transferred as part of the transition." I nodded slowly. "That makes sense." I signed the paperwork she slid across the table. Clean signature, dated, time-stamped. Then I made a copy, added it to my personal file, and scanned it to my private cloud storage. Catherine looked relieved. "Thank you for being so understanding. This isn't easy." "It's fine," I said. And it was. Because I knew something she didn't. Signing paperwork doesn't automatically transfer legal authority. That requires a separate process through the contract compliance system. And no one had filed that paperwork yet. I'd checked that morning. Which meant that legally, contractually, I was still the authorized signatory on every account they just reassigned. The VP rolled out Jonah like a product launch. Flashy presentation. Confident handshakes. A background in disruptive client solutions, which apparently meant he'd worked at a tech startup that folded after 18 months. He stood in front of the team, grinning like he'd already won something, and outlined his vision for collaborative partnership ecosystems. I watched from the back of the room as he promised clients things he couldn't deliver. Faster turnaround times. More flexible terms. Customized solutions that sounded impressive until you realized they violated 3 different regulatory frameworks. I took notes. Every overreach. Every impossible promise. Every clause he clearly hadn't read. When the meeting ended, he approached me. "June, right? I'm excited to learn from your experience." "Of course," I said. "The contracts are in the shared drive. Section 4 covers renewal protocols. Section 7 covers authorization requirements. Both are worth reviewing carefully." He nodded, already distracted by his phone. "Absolutely. I'll dive in this week." He wouldn't. I knew he wouldn't. Because people who talk about disruption rarely bother with the fine print. They believe enthusiasm can override structure. It can't. And 3 days from now, he'd learn that the hard way. My access was revoked Friday morning at 9 o'clock sharp. I logged into the contract management system and was greeted with a red banner, "Access restricted, contact system administrator." I'd expected this. Prepared for it, even. But seeing it still felt like a door slamming shut. I opened my email and sent the screenshots I'd taken earlier to my personal account. Then I navigated to the authorization dashboard one last time. The records were still there, unchanged. Every account still listed me as the primary officer. Every renewal still required my countersignature. The company had removed my login credentials, but hadn't updated the legal registrations. It was the corporate equivalent of changing the locks but leaving the deed in my name. I closed my laptop. The next 48 hours would be revealing. Either someone in legal would catch the oversight and scramble to fix it, or the system would start rejecting renewal requests automatically. Based on what I knew about the current legal team's workload, I was betting on the latter. I packed my personal items slowly. A photo frame. A coffee mug. The folder from my locked drawer. When I walked out of the building that afternoon, I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. Saturday morning, I drafted an email to myself. Subject line, documentation complete. The body was simple, all contract authorizations verified. Company failed to file transfer paperwork. Legal authority remains unchanged. I attached every screenshot, every clause, every authorization record I'd compiled. Then I set a delayed send for Monday morning at 8 a.m., 2 hours before the first renewal request would process. I wasn't being vindictive. I was being thorough. If something happened to me, if my laptop died or my files corrupted, this email would serve as a timestamp. Proof that I'd documented everything, that I'd known exactly what the company had overlooked. I spent the rest of the weekend in silence. No work emails. No stress. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that Monday morning, somewhere in a glass tower downtown, people were going to panic. And there was nothing they could do to stop it. My whispered thought as I closed my laptop, "You'll see why this mattered in 48 hours. Then I made tea and read a book. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. Sunday evening, Desmond Shaw called again. "June, I need clarity. Who am I supposed to contact for our Q4 renewal?" His tone was polite but firm. "You'll receive the renewal documentation directly from me," I said. A pause. "From you? I thought you transitioned roles." "I did. But the authorization protocol hasn't been updated yet. Until it is, renewals still route through my approval." "And when will that be updated?" "That's a question for the company's legal team." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear him thinking through the implications. "I see. And if I have concerns about the new account manager?" "You can address those through the standard escalation channels." "But Desmond, between us? You built this relationship with me. That doesn't change because someone updated an org chart." "No," he said quietly. "It doesn't." When we hung up, I knew what was coming. Desmond wasn't the type to accept change passively. He'd push back. Ask questions. Demand answers. And when those answers didn't satisfy him, he'd make decisions. The kind of decisions that show up in quarterly revenue reports. The VP hosted a launch party Monday evening. Celebrating new directions, read the invitation. Open bar, catered appetizers, a speech about growth through leadership evolution. I wasn't invited. But I saw the photos. Social media lit up with images of the executive team toasting glasses, of Jonah shaking hands with people he'd met that morning, of the VP grinning like a campaign winner. What caught my attention were the comments. Clients I'd worked with for years, quietly tagging me in posts with messages like "Miss your professionalism already," and "Hope you're doing well, June." One comment, from the CEO of Thornhill Partners, was particularly pointed. "Interesting strategy. Hope it works out." It was corporate code for "This is a mistake, and we're watching to see how big of one." I didn't respond to any of them. Engagement would look defensive, and I wasn't defending anything. I was just waiting. Because I knew something the people at that party didn't. Tomorrow morning, the system was going to start rejecting renewal requests. And by the time they figured out why, it would be too late to fix it quietly. Tuesday morning, the contract management system did exactly what I knew it would. At 9:14 a.m., the first renewal request processed. The system ran its automated verification checks, cross-referenced the authorization records, and flagged a critical error: account renewal blocked, missing authorized representative signature. Within minutes, the dashboard lit up red. Account after account triggering the same error. Finance flagged it first, escalating to the legal team. Legal pulled the records and discovered the problem. Every authorization still listed me as the primary officer. No transfer paperwork. No updated registrations. Just a gap where a process should have been. By 10:30, an emergency meeting was called. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later from someone still on the inside. The VP stood at the front of the conference room, his confident smile replaced by barely concealed frustration. Who's responsible for updating renewal authorizations? Silence. Someone must have processed the transfer paperwork. More silence. Finally, someone from legal spoke up. Technically, she's still listed as the authorized officer. We can't process renewals without her counter-signature. The VP's face went white. Why wasn't this updated when we reassigned her? Because no one filed the transfer request. The first client complaint arrived before lunch. Halstead Industries, Desmond Shaw's company, sent a formal escalation email copied to the CEO. We refuse to proceed with renewal processes that do not include June as the oversight officer. Her removal was not discussed with us, and we do not recognize alternative authorization. The VP called a crisis meeting. I know because 3 people texted me about it within minutes. The panic was setting in now, spreading through departments like a virus. Operations wanted to override the system. Legal said they couldn't without violating contract terms. Finance wanted to know why nobody had flagged this earlier. The VP blamed everyone except himself. Someone finally asked the obvious question, can we just call her and ask her to authorize the renewals? The legal director shook his head. She's no longer an employee. She has no obligation to act on our behalf. And even if she wanted to, she'd need formal authorization from us to access the system, which we can't grant without reinstating her employment. The VP sat down heavily. The room fell silent. That's when they realized they weren't dealing with a technical glitch. They were dealing with a structural failure. One they'd created themselves. The messages started arriving late Tuesday night. First from Catherine in HR, then from the operations director, then from people I barely knew. June, can you log in just once to authorize the pending renewals? We need your help to resolve a system error. This is urgent, please respond. I read every message. Then I drafted a single reply, addressed to all of them. I'm no longer an employee of Bridgeport Financial Solutions. I cannot access company systems or perform authorization functions without formal employment status. Any questions regarding contract transfers should be directed to your legal compliance team. I hit send and closed my laptop. My phone continued buzzing for another hour. I turned off notifications. This wasn't cruelty. This was consequence. They'd removed me from their systems, reassigned my accounts, and restructured my role without considering what I actually did. Now they were learning. And the lesson was expensive. Because every day those renewals stayed blocked, the company bled credibility. And in finance, credibility is the only currency that matters. Wednesday morning, the legal director made the discovery everyone had been dreading. The contracts couldn't be transferred without the original officer's written approval. Not an email. Not verbal consent. A formal, notarized document acknowledging the transfer of legal authority. And that document required my signature. Every agreement over $10 million was frozen. Operations couldn't process them. Legal couldn't override them. Finance couldn't restructure them. The entire portfolio sat in limbo, accumulating late fees and triggering breach clauses. The VP tried damage control, sending a memo to the executive team framing it as a temporary administrative delay. But word was already spreading. Clients talk to each other. They compare notes. And when multiple accounts at the same firm hit the same problem simultaneously, people notice. By midday, 3 more clients had sent escalation emails. Two of them explicitly requested my reinstatement. One threatened contract termination if the issue wasn't resolved within 5 business days. The VP's temporary delay was becoming a permanent crisis. And I was sitting in a coffee shop across town, reading industry news and sipping a latte. Unbothered. Unreachable. Watching the consequences unfold in real time. The call came Thursday afternoon. Not from the VP. Not from HR. From the CEO himself. Xavier Brennan, a man who'd spoken to me exactly twice in 11 years, was suddenly very interested in a conversation. June. His voice was tired. We need your cooperation. I kept my tone professional. Mr. Brennan, I appreciate the call, but I can't act without employment authority. I'm no longer authorized to access your systems or perform signatory functions. Then we'll negotiate terms. Terms for what exactly? Reinstatement. Consulting. Whatever structure works for you. I let the silence stretch. I'll need time to consider any formal proposal. How much time? 48 hours. June, we have clients threatening to leave. I understand. That must be difficult. Another pause. You built those relationships. You know that. I do. Then help us preserve them. Mr. Brennan, with respect, I built those relationships through consistency and trust. You disrupted both without consulting me or the clients. Now you're asking me to repair damage I didn't cause. The line went quiet. I'll send you a formal proposal by end of day, he finally said. Thank you, I replied. I'll review it carefully. When the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. This wasn't revenge. This was just the natural consequence of treating people as interchangeable parts. Friday morning, the exodus began. Not dramatically. Not publicly. Just quietly, professionally, with the kind of finality that leaves no room for negotiation. Halstead Industries terminated their contract effective immediately, citing loss of trusted oversight personnel. Thornhill Partners followed 3 hours later. By noon, 4 accounts had formally exited. Not because they were angry. Because they no longer trusted Bridgeport to manage their needs. I received personal messages from each of them. June, wherever you land, let us know. We'd rather work with you independently than stay here. You built something real. They threw it away. I responded professionally to each one. I appreciate your trust. I'll be in touch soon. Because I already knew where I was landing. Wednesday afternoon, while the VP was scrambling to contain the crisis, I'd received a message from Helena Cross, CEO of Meridian Capital Partners. Meridian was Bridgeport's primary competitor. We'd crossed paths at industry conferences over the years, always cordial, always respectful. Her message was direct. I heard about the situation. If you're open to conversations, we'd love to discuss opportunities. I'd replied within an hour, I'm very interested. When can we meet? We met Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, I had a formal offer. Director of Client Relations. Equity stake. Full autonomy. And a promise, any clients who chose to follow me would be welcomed with seamless transition support. The board called an emergency session Friday evening. I wasn't there, but the aftermath was public enough. Internal memos leaked. Executives started updating LinkedIn profiles. The VP was placed on administrative leave pending a full review of the transition process. The official statement was careful, leadership restructuring to address operational challenges. Translation: someone's head needed to roll, and the VP's was the most convenient. I felt nothing reading the news. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just the hollow recognition that this entire disaster could have been avoided with a single conversation. June, we're thinking about restructuring. What are your thoughts? That's all it would have taken. Instead, they treated me like a line item. Now they were discovering that some line items hold up the entire spreadsheet. By Monday morning, 6 more accounts had submitted termination notices. The company's market value dropped 11% in a single week. And I was sitting in Meridian's office, reviewing transition paperwork with Helena, mapping out which clients would follow and which systems we'd need to integrate. The work felt familiar, comfortable, like coming home after a long, exhausting trip. The following Tuesday, I officially started at Meridian. My new office had floor-to-ceiling windows and a door that actually closed. Helena introduced me to the team with a simple statement: June built billion-dollar relationships through trust and precision. That's what we value here. No buzzwords. No talk of disruption or agility. Just clarity. Within hours, my new email was active. Within days, renewal pipelines were live. My old clients didn't hesitate. Contracts were signed within 48 hours, each one bearing Meridian's logo now instead of Bridgeport's. Desmond Shaw was the first to transfer. "Took you long enough," he joked on our kickoff call. "I was wondering if you'd ever leave that sinking ship." "I didn't leave," I corrected gently. "They pushed me overboard." Their loss. Our gain. By the end of the first week, 9 accounts had transferred. Total value, $800 million. Not all of them. Some stayed with Bridgeport out of inertia or existing obligations. But enough followed to send a clear message. In high-stakes finance, people don't follow companies. They follow the person they trust. And Bridgeport had just learned that lesson in the most expensive way possible. The trade publication hit newsstands 2 weeks later. "Major finance clients exit Bridgeport following leadership misstep," read the headline. The article was detailed, citing anonymous sources who described a failure to properly transition account management authority, leading to contractual gridlock and client defection. The VP's name appeared 6 times, always in the context of decisions that backfired. My name appeared twice, described only as the former senior relationship manager whose departure triggered the exodus. I read the article once, sitting in my new office with morning coffee, then closed the browser. I had work to do. Real work. The kind that didn't require me to constantly justify my value or defend my methods. Helena stopped by my office later that morning. "You've seen the news?" "I have." "Any regrets?" I considered the question. "No. I gave them 11 years. They gave me a midnight email." She nodded. "Their loss is our gain. Your clients trust you, June. That's worth more than any contract. It's the only thing worth anything in this business." She smiled. "Agreed. Now, let's talk about expanding your portfolio. I think you're ready for more." Bridgeport reached out one more time. The email arrived 3 weeks after I'd started at Meridian. Subject line: Consulting opportunity, urgent. The body was desperate in its formality. "June, we recognize your unique expertise and the value of your client relationships. We would like to explore consulting terms to facilitate contract recovery and client retention. Please let us know your availability for discussions. Compensation is negotiable." I read it 3 times. Part of me, the part that had spent 11 years building something real at that company, felt a flicker of sympathy. But sympathy doesn't rebuild trust. And it doesn't undo the damage caused by treating people as expendable. I forwarded the email to Meridian's legal team with a single line: decline. Conflict of interest. Then I archived it. There would be no consulting. No bridge back. They'd made their choice when they replaced me without notice, when they dismissed my processes as bureaucracy, when they believed confidence could substitute for competence. Now they could live with the consequences. I had no interest in saving them from themselves. The VP called me directly 4 weeks later. His number appeared on my screen late on a Thursday afternoon, and I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. June. His voice was different now. Tired. Stripped of the performance. I wanted to apologize. I said nothing. I misjudged the situation. I didn't understand what you'd built. You didn't ask, I said quietly. No, I didn't. A pause. For what it's worth, I know now that you weren't just managing accounts. You built trust. Real trust. The kind that takes years. And you treated it like a line item on a restructuring slide. I did. And I was wrong. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt exhausted. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better. And because maybe if I'd listened, none of this would have happened. Maybe, I agreed. But it did happen. And now we both have to live with it. I know. I just wanted you to know I understand now. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. Not because the apology changed anything, but because acknowledgement matters. Even when it comes too late. Take care of yourself, I added. Then I hung up. 6 weeks after leaving Bridgeport, I received a settlement offer. Final compensation and non-disclosure agreement, read the subject line. The document was thorough. Back pay, accrued vacation, a modest severance package tied to a comprehensive NDA that would prevent me from discussing the circumstances of my departure. I read through it carefully, noting every clause, every restriction, every attempt to buy my silence. Then I drafted my response. Thank you for the offer. I decline. No non-disclosure agreement is necessary. I have no interest in publicly discussing internal company matters. My focus is entirely on my current work and the clients I serve. The past is settled. I didn't need their money. I didn't need their legal protection. I needed nothing from them at all. And that, more than anything else, was the final measure of how completely the situation had resolved. They'd pushed me out, thinking I was replaceable. Instead, they'd freed me to build something better. I hit send and turned my attention back to the project on my screen. A new client onboarding. Clean processes. Clear expectations. Built on the foundation I'd always believed in, trust, earned slowly and protected carefully. 3 months later, I sat in my corner office watching sunrise spill across the city. My desk was organized but lived in. A photo frame showing my family. A coffee mug for my first week at Meridian. And a small framed note Helena had given me, integrity is good business. My dashboard glowed green across every client account. Renewals processed smoothly. No red flags. No authorization errors. Just systems working the way they should when built on solid foundations. An email notification appeared. Subject line, Final Settlement, Bridgeport Financial Solutions. I opened it. The message was brief. Please accept this as confirmation of final account closure and settlement of all obligations. We wish you success in your future endeavors. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a bureaucratic farewell. I smiled and moved the email to the archive. Then I opened my calendar. 2 client calls this morning. A strategy meeting after lunch. A new account review in the afternoon. Work that mattered. Work built on trust. My phone buzzed. A message from Desmond Shaw, June. Quick question about Q1 projections. Got 5 minutes. I typed back, always. Call whenever. Because that's what this job really was. Being available. Being reliable. Being the person clients trusted when everything else felt uncertain. Bridgeport had forgotten that. They'd learned the hard way. And I'd moved on. Not with bitterness, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing my worth. And building something real on that foundation. The sunrise finished its climb. Time to start the day. Thank you for watching this story. If moments like these resonate with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over people who couldn't see you, then you're not alone. We share stories like this every single day, real accounts of people who found their voice, set their boundaries, and walked into the life they deserved. Subscribe so you never miss the next upload, and share your own story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. I love you all.